This is the last video I'm going to do on Guy Standing's book, The Precariat, the New Dangerous Class, and it has to do with the last two chapters of the book. One is entitled The Politics of Inferno, and the other, The Politics of Paradise. And so that gives you a clue right there as to what this is about, kind of like the worst case scenario, kind of where we're headed according to Standing, and then what he would rather have happen. And so today I just wanted to discuss some of the big major themes that stood out to me. The first being throughout the book, Standing is arguing that state policy is what creates and maintains a precariat. In other words, the fact that there is a precariat, a large mass of vulnerable workers who are typically not working full time, who are not in control of their schedule, do not have any security, no future benefits, this kind of thing, that this is not an accident, and it's not just a product of the natural unfolding of the economy, but rather it takes state collaboration with that economy's unfolding to create this and maintain this vulnerable group of workers who will take just about any kind of work for any kind of pay. And some of the state policies that he talks about include the workfare idea, the idea that you can't receive welfare unless you work. Now, until Standing puts all this together, it might be difficult for people to see this as more or less logically a conscious policy, right, of keeping people in their place. But workfare is the idea that you must show that you're looking for work, and to a certain extent, at a certain point, you have to take work, and you cannot, when you're required to do that in order to receive benefits, you can't be picky and choosy. You can't wait for a job that matches your credentials. You're pretty much forced to take whatever you can find, and to kind of constantly be under the gun and desperate. And when you add to that all the other rather Byzantine welfare programs that a lot of countries have, in which people have to check all kinds of boxes and fit all kinds of criteria and have to constantly prove that they're not being lazy slackers, and that they're doing what society thinks is necessary for them to eventually, get out of their state and become more gainfully employed. It is a system in which people are made to feel guilty for their circumstances, and they're made to work very hard, and Standing makes a lot of this. They're working very hard just to eke out whatever benefits they can get, as well as finding whatever job they can find. And this is a very convenient situation for employers who do not want to pay people very much, who have jobs that are interchangeable because they're low skill, don't want to give people any sort of job security or future benefits, and just want labor exactly when they want it and no more, just-in-time labor. When you add to that the state's upholding of all sorts of credentialing and licensing for various types of jobs, so that a person, very few people can just learn through, their own process or through apprenticing. There are some occupations where you can still do that, but not that many. And for a lot of them, you have to get a degree or you have to get a credential of some kind. And that costs money. And of course, the state has been pulling and pulling and pulling back money for education to the point where that education is out of the range of a lot of people now as far as what they can afford. So this is another hoop. So there's all these hoops, okay? Then the state allows for a very low minimum wage, and in that way upholds this practice of basically using people for as little as you can pay them as possible. It allows the corporate use of the cheapest labor they can find anywhere in the world. There's been very little fighting back against that. We'll see if that begins to happen. But that's probably the biggest contributor of all, is states refusing to to a certain extent, protect their society's labor by a variety of means, thereby allowing corporations to go wherever the labor is absolutely cheapest. Well, when you do that, it drives down the labor costs everywhere. The price of labor goes down everywhere. And so all of this adds up to creating and maintaining a precariat. Last thing I'll mention is reducing the space for public learning. Not only community colleges and universities getting more expensive, but even such things as meeting halls and public libraries. Here in my state, apparently, I've been told, we have folks in rural Midwest that that believe that public libraries are kind of a socialist or communist conspiracy because they're publicly funded. So the ideology that's promoted that goes along with this very conveniently tells people that any sort of public good that they could use to learn something and to maybe get a job outside of their little immediate area is bad, is considered bad. So standing's right on there, I think, that we have done our very best ideologically, politically, socially, economically to reduce the chances for people to get out from under and free themselves from this precarious situation. And standing's the next theme that I think he's right about, and I've said this over and over again on this channel, is that unless we do something serious about the incredible and growing inequality and this incredibly felt anxiety of precariousness on the part of an awful lot of people, we will continue to see the growth of populist neo-fascism. And that is because neo-fascists do, or whatever you want to call them, that may not be your preferred term, but they do appeal to a certain amount of economic redistribution. They are not completely anti or pro-capitalist, and they are for a certain amount of economic protection, and notably they're anti-immigrant, right? And of course, the problem with neo-fascism is that it tends to become a rather violent or discriminatory force that ends up dividing societies and promoting xenophobia and racism. In the ideal world, it wouldn't have to, but in reality, that's what it does. And it is dangerous. And this is part of the reason why Standing calls the precariat the new dangerous class. It's a lot of people. It has a lot of potential power. And the question is, how will that power be used? How will it come to the fore? What type of ideals and policies will it glom onto? And I don't know if Standing's preferred policies are the ideal solution for this problem. I don't think he gives a really coherent picture of what could replace that, but he does try. And I've got to give him credit for that. Now, he says the nanny state is not a solution. Those are my terms, the nanny state. Okay, but we do here in the United States have a sort of nanny state when it comes to welfare. Okay, we won't give people anything hardly unless they can be managed by caseworkers and by regulations and rules. If you have what we used to call food stamps or the SNAP card, SNAP benefit, which allows you to get groceries for your family, you can't just use that any way you want. When you go into a grocery store, sometimes you'll see these little signs. This is approved, that is approved for WIC or SNAP and this and that. Every time a person with those cards goes into a grocery store, they get reminded that somebody else is smarter than they are and is managing their every move because they obviously can't figure out what food they want to eat. Meantime, all of America is eating as unhealthy and consuming as much junk as humanly possible. So it is ridiculous to say that the poor have, have particularly bad notions about what to buy. But the thing is, when we regulate all of this and we say, well, you can only have that benefit if you spend it like us smart people know you should, or you can only, have this housing benefit or this amount of welfare if you do what us smart people think you should, which would be to go to training or go to school, maybe not try to start your own home business or whatever it may be. Well, we know best. When you say this, you're basically saying you don't know how to think for yourself. And it encourages people just feel demoralized and as though they spend most of their days jumping through hoops, and that there are many other people saying that they don't know what they're doing. This is not a recipe for a sense of independence and can do. Now, a lot of times American conservatives do have this very paternalistic attitude that, poor people are poor because they're somehow lazy or they're stupid. They don't have good values and so on and so forth. Standing argues, and I agree with him, that not only is this wrong, look around, there are plenty of people without good values in our society. It is not relegated to the poor. But also, this type of nanny state welfare produces this large group of people who can, while castigating the people they serve, make a good living off of them. So there's this huge bureaucracy that's designed to administer all of these welfare programs for the betterment of the poor. And the people who administer them, ironically enough, have way more income and job security than the people that they're helping, even in the best case scenario, even if they did everything that they were supposed to do according to the Nanny State, they would never gain the type of income and job security that the welfare bureaucracy has. And all of this amounts to the precariat feeling as though they are the guilty ones, as though there's something wrong with them. And we don't usually think of it this way because we usually relegate the term gaslighting to like romantic relationships or something like that. But this is a form of gaslighting on a massive scale. The idea that, well, it's you. You just need to get out of bed in the morning. You just need to have the gumption to get training. You don't want to work hard. You need to figure out a way to get some education, even if it means going into a lot of debt with no hope necessarily of any good return from it. And most insidiously of all, according to Standing, maybe you just need some free, or publicly subsidized counseling or therapy or medication. We've got that. We've got a whole bureaucracy for helping people with their mental health problems. But a lot of times mental health problems are the result of a lifetime of being gaslighted or being made to feel less than. And for a reason that isn't clear, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Standing's biggest proposal for fixing this, and he does have a lot in here that is, they're not like well detailed, but he does at least mention some specific ideas. But the biggest one, and the one that's gotten the most traction from a lot of people who are critical of the system the way it is now, is the idea of a universal basic income. A universal basic income would have the virtue of cutting out the middleman, first of all, to get rid of that whole apparatus and superstructure that is there to judge. He basically says, okay, let's say that 0.5% of the recipients of our current welfare benefits are lazy or, just don't want to work. Is that enough to justify an entire system which is built up on judgment and evaluation? Okay. Or would it not be less expensive and less paternalistic and less demoralizing to just simply transfer a certain minimum amount, not enough to make people feel comfortable enough that they would not work, but enough to give them choices? For instance, what if one partner wants to stay home and raise the family, right? While the other partner has a job, so that the family has more likelihood of remaining intact. Because as we know now, I mean, it's like a huge balancing act. How can I work and make enough money and figure out how to pay for my childcare and still make money, okay? Or maybe one partner in a family decides that they want to have a cottage industry, that they want to start a home-based small business, any number of small businesses, right? That type of entrepreneurship won't happen if they have absolutely no sense that they can get by next year unless they also have a job. In a lot of cases, people in this class have 2 or 3 jobs. How could they ever figure out what they might be able to provide the community and make some money off of in that situation? So it's, you know, the basic income is an idea that's gaining traction. A lot of people are interested in it. I like it for the fact that it does, it's less judgmental. It's just more rational. It's just simple, okay? And as he points out, there's a lot of money that people make in a society such as ours off of their investments through no particular work. Now, you could argue that the fact that they had money to invest represents their work. But then let's say that you took $1,000 and you invested it, and 20 years later it's worth $100,000, which is not inconceivable at all in the investing environment that we've had for the last, say, I don't know, 10 years or so. Well, that isn't all your work, right? A lot of that comes from some people having a knowledge of how to invest, and other people don't have that knowledge. And a lot of it is just sheer luck and riding trends, right? And sort of profiting off of the destruction of the or the demise of the small and middling businesses that have led to this massive corporate takeover and our corporate globalized economy. So basic income is an idea that I think is worth exploring. I'm not at all saying that I 100% advocate for it yet, but I do think that it's definitely an idea that's worth exploring, and that it has merits compared to the system that we have now. Because I think it would support people in the decisions they make to do work. And Standing points out that work in our society includes an awful lot that isn't labor, as in isn't paid for, right? Right now, that work to like preserve your family structure or the community that you happen to live in, your elderly parents, your kids, your friends and associates, like that is not considered anything from the point of view of the economy, from the point of view of the state, from the point of view of welfare programs. And the basic income would acknowledge that work and would in effect say that work is valuable too. And we want to give people options so that, let's say, if a mom or dad wanted to work just one part-time job and they wanted to actually raise their family instead of having other people do it for a fee, they might be able to figure out how to do that with a basic income. All right. Finally, he talks about the precariat needs to organize, right? And that is so difficult because, as he's explained in this book, the precariat is so incredibly diverse, even in income levels. Some get paid very well. Like a temporary nurse could make $120,000 a year, all right, if he or she took enough jobs, right? But have no job security, no retirement plan, and not know for sure whether next year would be as good as this year. So the precariat is not just the person who works at 3 different fast food restaurants or retail stores, or as an Uber driver. So they're very diverse. One of the things that he talks about is perhaps in addition to still encouraging the precariat to somehow find a common identity, which he does not give up on. And I just wonder if that is ever going to be possible. But he also talks about building up a new idea of guilds or work associations where people organize maybe at the local or regional level in representation of certain types of economic activity, okay? Whether it's, you know, the grocery store workers and owners and management, okay, maybe coming together and having to deal with each other at an organizational level. Who knows, you know? This is stuff that I want to think more about as to whether it would be possible at all. But again, I've got to give him credit for at least trying and throwing in a lot of ideas here.